unlike plan sponsors, service providers aren't generally primarily responsible for compliance with these rules because they take steps to avoid fiduciary status. But as Liz mentioned, plan sponsors are going to turn to record keepers and service providers for help with these issues. And because record keepers and other service providers kind of implement system-wide steps to help with compliance, we end up with a kind of a systemic risk across the firm if there are kind of footfalls and issues with how the firm is helping plan sponsors comply with these rules. So, while not primarily responsible, I think taking a look at the new guidance is really very important for service providers, clearly, and kind of taking a look at, what kind of steps what can you support? What are plan sponsors going to be looking for help with? I'll say in my experience helping service providers deal with missing participant issues, the biggest issue we've really seen is inconsistency in the agreements and plan documents and how the responsibilities are kind of defined between the service provider and the plan sponsor, whether they're consistent with what the plan document says, be it a prototype or an individually designed plan, and then kind of vagueness in the actual agreement terms about who's doing what and what is actually going to be done. So I think one of the first steps really, even though not necessarily mandated or even mentioned so much in the guidance, is to really take a look at the agreements and documents that are currently in place and see if there are inconsistencies and if those responsibilities really are clearly defined. I think another area, as Liz highlighted before on the plan sponsor side, is unclear participant communications. And so to the extent the record keeper has taken on responsibility to communicate issues like benefit commencement dates, and what happens when somebody is missing and whether their benefits could be forfeited, I think making sure that those communications are very clear and kind of working with the plan sponsor to clarify any issues there is another important step. And then another big area for service providers really is uncashed checks. I think that is one area where there's a lot of risk, because if you don't have the procedures designed correctly, if you have uncashed checks that kind of sitting waiting for disbursement for a long period of time, you can run into issues with float that really do start to raise some ERISA fiduciary issues. Making sure you have good float disclosures in place and really limiting the time that uncashed checks are out of the plan is a really important step to take. And I think there's also kind of a category that you can look at as self-help. So even if you're not really required or by your agreements to take certain steps, I think being kind of proactive in tracking missing participants and uncashed checks and communicating registries with plan sponsors of those issues is very helpful and can kind of prevent any kind of compliance problem that you could be, even if not technically on the hook for as an ERISA fiduciary, could cause some issues for you as a service provider. Doing some periodic coordination with plan sponsors on looking at missing participants and seeing where a plan sponsor has an issue can be helpful. And then also, I think, to help with some of the inconsistencies in administration, considering adopting or considering drafting some missing participant policies and procedures that the plan sponsor can adopt may also be a good place to look to make sure that you have a consistent operations with, kind of what the plan sponsor has agreed to do and is looking for. That could be another area.